Hello, everyone. Today is August 15th, 2018. I hope everybody is having a great week. As you can see, I am still here up in Pennsylvania seeing my parents. Hello, Dan. Dan is the first one in tonight. Congratulations to you, Dan. And Andrea, good to see you. Yes, as you can see, I'm still up here in Pennsylvania. I anticipate going back to Florida next Monday. Leaving on Monday and then getting there Tuesday. We'll see if that happens. Hello, Andrea. Dee Dee and Melinda. What's up? Shuri and Anna and Heather. Everybody's getting in here, so maybe I'll let you all get situated. Hope everybody's doing great. Had a busy week so far, as you can imagine, but actually, usually on if you don't know this, usually on Wednesday, hey, Janet, what's going on? And Heather, hi, Janet, how are you doing? Heather, Carrie, Barbara, Sarah. If you don't know, usually on Wednesdays, usually the way I work out doing the program is I like to get the interview done at least a week ahead. So I have a chance to listen to it and make sure that I have a good feel for it before I record my part of every episode. And Dee Dee's saying there's tornado warnings there in Indiana tonight. Well, Dee Dee, we'll understand if you need to break away from watching. I'll totally understand. And Christy, what's up? But I usually like to have the interview done a week beforehand, at least a week ahead of time. And then what I do is usually on Tuesdays is when I start writing the first portion of the program, meaning the intro before the music, and then the little introduction, little theme at the beginning, and then the summary of the case, Unfound news and stuff. I usually like to get that done on Tuesday on top of everything else that I do for the program on a Tuesday. And then on Wednesday is when I work on the interview, meaning I listen to it and I, delete any of the mistakes, work on the audio some, see what we have there. And it's that point when I'm listening to, once again, the interview again, is I start thinking about what I'm going to say in the short summation that I do for every episode. And everybody knows usually there's like a 7-minute space at the beginning of the program, then the interview, and then usually about 3 to 5 minutes of a summation at the end. I think that the program follows that pattern every week. Let's see who else has got in here. Tracy, what's up? Chandra, I'm going to answer your question that you sent me. And it's good to see everybody. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I deeply appreciate it. So, and then on Wednesdays, I listen to the interview, make sure the audio sounds good, do what I have to do there. And depending on how long the interview is, that could take from a couple hours. Of course, maybe an interview like I did with Penny Meek for the Thomas Brown case. That's one of the longest interviews ever. That interview was like 3 hours. So it just depends. And then on Thursday is usually when I finish it up, meaning I do the last part of the episode, like that 3 to 5 minute summation at the end is when I usually write it, to figure out what I want to say, and then record it on. That's usually, so Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays are when I usually work on the program, once again, as long as the interview is done before then. And hello, Joyce. Sorry I missed your call today, Joyce. We're going to try to talk tomorrow, aren't we? Michelle, Susie, Penny, good to see you. Caitlin, good to see all of you tonight. Thank you. And then, but this week, I happen to have everything done as we speak. The interview, everything is already done. Everything is already recorded for Friday, and I love to be able to work ahead when I can. It's just sometimes that's not possible. So as I speak here, Friday's episode is already completed. And I'm hoping to do the interview for next Friday's episode within the next couple of days, and I think that that's going to happen. So just giving you a little insight on how it all works. And usually I have to space all the other things that I do for the program or things that I have to do that don't have anything to do with the program around that schedule of knowing on Tuesdays I do this, Wednesdays I do this, and then Thursdays I do this. And whenever I can talk to people on the phone for preliminary conversations and interviews, I try to fit those in whenever I can. Angela, hello, and Dorothy, I'm going to be answering your question that you asked. I'm going to get to it. So I thought you might find that a little interesting on how the episodes come together and when I do everything for an episode. I have no idea what other podcasters do. I don't know how far they work ahead. I really have no idea. I don't know. I know that maybe some people might be of the opinion, well, if you can line up all these interviews, you should do them like all at one time or something like that and have them saved. And I really don't like to get too far ahead. I don't like to do an interview and that episode not going to come out for like 3 weeks. I don't like to do it that way. I've done that. I've had the opportunity to do that, and I've done that a couple times. But if at some point it makes me feel very detached from that episode or from that case. It's like you do this, you record the interview, and then you don't come back to it for 2 weeks. And then it's almost like I have to almost relearn everything. So I don't like to work too far ahead. If that's what happens, I guess that's what happens, but that's not usually the plan. I usually don't like to do interviews too much more than maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks before they are going to come out. I think that's best for me and, how I handle the program. So there you go. But as of now, Friday's episode is already completed. So I'll be ready to post it at 2 p.m. Friday. So that's what's going on. So I'm steering here in Pennsylvania. As you can see all the stuff in the background. By the way, I'm wearing an Unfound shirt tonight. I had a meeting, and Carrie says it tends to jumble things too. That's right. Sometimes when you start doing too many interviews at one time, too many phone conversations, I have to admit sometimes it may be a little tough to keep everything straight. Carrie, you're right. Sherry, good to see you tonight. And Michelle, hello, Ed, and all. I had a problem finding you tonight. Well, I'm glad you got tuned in there, Michelle. I'm sorry that you had a problem. Jamie, welcome. But I had a meeting over at the Tribune Review on Monday. Of course, I can't go into any of the technical details of it or anything. But I had a good meeting over there. I got to go to their building for the first time on Monday morning. I don't think I've ever been in a newspaper building before. I was in a TV station when I was in Las Vegas, but it was good to go over there, meet a couple of the people who I've only known through email. That was good, and it was good. It was good to talk, throwing around, just analyzing the articles that we've done so far, and thinking about what we need to do for the upcoming ones that we'll be doing in future months, and what I need. Always trying to see if we can do things better. So it was a good meeting, and I'm glad I went over there. Glad I got to meet the people. Although I do have to tell you that getting up at like 7:30 in the morning and having to take a shower and everything, that's a little bit too much feeling like a real job. Me, these days, I tend to be a little bit of a night owl. I don't go to midnight till 1 in the morning, and then I don't get up till 9 or something like that usually. That's how it's kind of worked out. So getting up at 7:30 and getting a shower and making myself all pretty and everything, and then getting in the car and driving an hour and a half, that kind of feels like a job to me. So it was a little weird, to be honest with you. So there you go. Darlene, good to see you, Darlene. We haven't talked in a while. Former guest of course, Darlene and her sister Shannon disappeared in Indiana some years ago, over 20 years ago. Darlene, good to see you tonight. Dee Dee says, I get up at 5:30 a.m. for work. Dee Dee, I used to have to do that. I used to have to do that when I lived in Las Vegas, and I was working like I was working in entertainment too, so I would be out working a show until like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then I'd have to get up at, I'd say 6 in the morning for a day job that I had. And it did that for a while. So I know what that's like. That's going back about 10 years now, though. Angel, good to see you tonight. So I had this meeting at the Trib. It was good. Just an update on the poll from the Melissa Hasley case from this previous Friday. You listeners, I have to tell you, you never cease to amaze me. It was, the poll, I think, was like 50-50. The question that if you didn't see it, the poll was, did the murder of, Melissa's disappearance have anything to do with the murder of Patricia Howlett? And did the murder of Melissa's sister, Georgina, in 2006 have anything to do with her disappearance? It was running very 50-50 for a while, yes or no regarding that. And then towards the end, before I unpinned the post just today, the yeses went ahead by like 50%. So there is a feeling out there that Georgina's murder in 2006 did have something to do with Missy's disappearance in 2002. I have to tell you, I feel differently regarding that. But once again, you know, and I was thinking, well, probably a majority of the listeners are going to agree with me. You didn't. Fine by me. Absolutely fine. That's great. Diversity of opinion, fine by me. So I thought that was interesting that the poll came out the way it did. I'm not convinced that Georgina's murder had anything to do with Missy's disappearance, and Missy's disappearance had anything to do with Patricia Howlett's murder back in 1994. But obviously, you listened to the episode. You made a different decision. That's fine. Great. Pamela says, I'm retired and get up at 5 a.m. The world is quietest then. Pamela, that is true. Carrie says, I think sister was murdered because she knew too much about Missy. Carrie, it seems a lot of other listeners feel like you do. I don't share that opinion, but once again, that's fine. That's fine. I do it just so my guest, who in that case was Lois, gets to see what people got out of it. You know, it's easy for me to tell her what I think, but doing the interview, people get to listen to it, and then they form their opinion, and then Lois gets to see what opinion was formed from the interview. So I think that's helpful for her. Shuri says, I thought it was 50-50. It was 50-50 for a while, Shuri, but then if you go look at the poll, it's still there. There are double the yes votes as there are no votes. So there you go. So some people got in late and pushed the poll one way. Maybe it was the Russians. I don't know. Ginger, hello. How are you doing tonight? Anything else? Oh, we got another newsletter coming out tomorrow. I haven't worked on it yet, but tomorrow I'll be working on it. So anybody who is on the mailing list will be getting August's newsletter tomorrow. So be looking for that. And if you aren't on the list, you don't think that you're on the list, please email me personally or message me on Facebook or email me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get you on the list. So, but that newsletter will be coming out tomorrow. I'll be working on it starting tomorrow morning, and I anticipate sending it out sometime in the afternoon. I try to get it out, you know, sometime the middle of every month. So this will be like, what, the 5th month I've done this? Something like that. So there you go. Let's answer a question. Dorothy asked me a question about the most accurate stats regarding missing persons cases. That's a great question. Even I sometimes don't know what to make of the actual stats regarding missing persons. It's a fluctuating number, and it all depends on what you mean by missing person. Not to mention that there are a lot of missing persons cases that are still open, and the people have been found, and they've come back, as most missing persons end up doing. So Dorothy was asking me, you know, where are the most accurate stats? And I usually just go to the FBI website for that. I know that other people have tried to compile lists, and I know that some states have tried to compile lists of how many missing people are in their state. And sometimes that's easy to do if all you want to do is add up all the missing persons reports that have been filed, let's say, over the last year. But that's not an accurate number because, once again, a lot of people don't go back to the police and say, you know what, my son came home, so that report is still open. I don't know if there's ever going to be an accurate number that for that. I think a little bit of it is guessing. Here's what I think I know. I think that there are about 90-some thousand open missing persons cases in the United States right now. And this goes back, this would mean all in total going back to the first missing persons report ever filed in the United States. And I don't even know, I should look that up. What is the oldest missing persons case in the United States that was actually filed with a police department? That is an interesting question. I'm going to have to think about that. But it's over 90,000 open cases, at least. But I would never say that I believe, I don't know what my confidence is in that number. I know it's a lot. I know that it's a lot. You know, even somebody like Megan Good, who has her own site with all of the people on there that she has on there, and you know, she works on that very hard, she will even admit that her list is nowhere close to complete. Nowhere close. But I still think she's doing a heck of a job. You know that. And NamUs isn't close to being complete. This is an ongoing issue. I think it's easier to compile that list now than it was 20 years ago because of the internet and social media and everything. But it's a number that we're never, I think, going to be sure of. All I can say is I think it's a huge number. And I think that 90,000 number, the number is probably higher than that as far as unsolved missing persons cases. 90,000. It's probably well higher than that. And it just depends. Where are those 90? What happened to those 90,000? Some people, I don't know. I think a majority of them are murders that people got away with it. Some of them were runaways. Some of them were suicides, you know, jumping off a bridge or something, body never found. It's a variety of circumstances, but I think most of them are probably murders. But that's in the United States, and I know that that is a huge number. It's a horrible number. But in a country that now has 330 million people in it, the number then doesn't seem as big, even though, once again, it's a huge number. I mean, 330 million has 7 zeros, and 90,000 only has 4 zeros. So, but it's still a huge number, and we're doing what we can to bring that number down. But I think I've said that if I covered a missing persons case on Unfound every day for the rest of my life and I lived to be 90, I would only be making a very, very small dent in that list, because today somewhere in the United States somebody went missing who is going to be missing probably for a long time, and it's probably more than one person just today, and it'll happen tomorrow and the day after that. It happens. Just because it's not a Molly Tibbetts case that gets national news doesn't mean there aren't missing people going missing every day who don't come back. Maureen Scott says, hello, Ed. I made it. Maureen, congratulations. And Shannon says, hello from Northern Kentucky. I'm going to have to think about the last time I was in the state of Kentucky. Probably at the airport or something like that. I don't know the last time I've driven through there. So there you go. But Dorothy, thank you for the excellent question. Just get some things out of the way. Unfound shirts at myshopify.com. Have not been working on shirts. Been up here in Pennsylvania. I got to start working hard on that once I get back to Florida. That's one of the things I've had to put on the back burner, being up here seeing my parents. Some other things, working on the books has been put to the side, being that I'm up here seeing my parents. But once again, some of those things will start back up once I get back to Florida. The books at Amazon.com had some new Patreon supporters come on board this week. Cannot thank them enough. If you are not a Patreon supporter, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider it. And the playing cards at makeplayingcards.com, that's something else that I need to work on once I get back to Florida. Let's answer another question. Let's answer another question. Maureen asked me, being that I just see her, Maureen, I'm going to answer your question right now, Maureen. Maureen asked me, do I ever get depressed? Covering all of these cases that I do. I think that's a really good question. Because probably privately, I've been asked that question before. And Maureen, the answer is no, I don't. I'm not saying that some of these cases don't affect me emotionally. They do. They do. But in the job that I have talking to these people, my job is to be objective. And it's not with the people when I contact them, or Emily or whoever contacts them, these families know who we are. And these families are not looking for sympathy from us. Our job is something else. The fact is that haven't met most of these people, and maybe never will meet most of these people. I'd love to, but I haven't. I don't know these people outside of talking to them on the phone. And yes, I get to know them and everything, and I do have sympathy for them. But when they find out about Unfound and we contact them, what they want is to get the information out there. We don't talk a lot about. I ask at the end of just about every interview how this has affected them and everything, but I don't get too emotionally wrapped up in these cases. I think they're all horrible. I do feel horrible, but the way I look at it might be, kind of like maybe a medic in the Army or something. I think of like that show Band of Brothers. There was an episode of that was devoted to nothing but this guy who was running around the battlefield trying to help all these guys he knew out who were getting shot and everything. In a position like that, you don't have time to look at a gaping wound and go, oh my God, and let it affect you mentally or anything. You have a job to do. And after the battle is over is when you can let, the emotions flood in. That's the kind of the way I see myself. I'm really like a field medic, during a war. Just going from person to person, doing the best I can in the job that I have. And I enjoy this job. I don't enjoy that these missing persons cases happen. I suppose that in that way, I'm very much no different than a doctor who, specializes in cancer. They don't like cancer. They didn't get in it because they like cancer. They got into that field because they want to cure cancer. They hate cancer, but they still love their job because they love trying to beat it and trying to make people live longer and cure cancer, etc. That's also kind of how I feel like what I do. Whereas I think that if a cancer doctor, every time that he saw cancer for the first time, he or she got affected deeply emotionally, I don't know if they could do their job correctly. So I don't get depressed about it. I feel horrible for these people. The guests that I have met in person know how bad I feel about it, but my feelings about my personal emotions are not relevant to what I do. So I don't get depressed mainly because I just try to focus on the job that needs to be done. That's the best way I can answer it. Michelle says, absolutely want our loved ones to be thought of as well. So we value your opinion on what you may have think happened. Sherry says these families need logic and evidence. That's the only thing going to move their case forward. Empathy is a bonus. Catherine says hello. Catherine, hello right back at you. And Michelle, you are a big help to us all. Ed, Emily too. We need you all to be strong and objective. Michelle, that's what we're trying to be. That's what we're trying to be. And, you know, sometimes both with Emily and myself and whoever else. I mean, oh, there we go. We're back. And that case is going to be, I think, possibly coming out next Friday. She knows as well that, you know, the people want the information out there. I think these people who have been affected by this, they know the public already knows they feel bad about and everything. What they want is all these names and facts and all these things out there in case somebody knows something. Well, I'm only good. I can only do a good job is if that's all of that is put out there. That's the only way that the show is any good. You know, the program is worthwhile and the program is helpful. If the program was nothing about talking about emotions and things like that, I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but that's probably handled better by somebody like a psychiatrist or somebody than a reporter, which is what I am. So Katrina says, do you think depression would set in if you had your own children? For I listen as a mom and it gets very emotional. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I have parents and I talk to people who've lost parents, and those cases don't affect me any more than the ones that are about children or siblings. So I don't know. Katrina, do you think set in if you had your own? I'm going to read it again. Do you think depression would set in if you had your own children? You know, you listen as a mom and it gets very emotional. Katrina, I understand why it gets emotional for. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's perfectly right. It's perfectly healthy. But once again, what I do is a job, and it's a job I like to do. I think that the way my mind works, it's very good for that. I'm going to say probably that people who have a different emotional makeup, mental makeup, this probably wouldn't be the best thing for them. It just depends on the person, just like anything else. Just like I am not capable of performing certain jobs. Like you ask me to manage people, like you ask me to manage a 7-Eleven, forget it. Whereas other people are great at it. It just depends. Just depends. Hello, Stephanie. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for the wave. I'm waving right back at you. So, Maureen, do I ever get depressed? No. I wake up every day ready to go, ready to work on the program. People to call, people to email, people to interview, things to record, all the things that I do. And I'm pumped up about it every day. And that's why I work on this program 7 days a week. I'm not saying that I devote 8 hours to it every day of the week, but I work on something with Unfound every day. And I don't think that I could do that if what I do was depressing me. Katrina, thank you. So let's talk a little let's talk a little bit about some things that have been in the news. This is something that's relatively new. 3 bodies were found in the Washington, D.C. area. The women's names, they're all African-American, I believe. Their names are Jewel King, Verdell Jefferson, and Dorothy Botts. These women all disappeared in 2006. And all within a few months of each other. I think one was in April, one was in August, and maybe one was at the end of 2006. All very close together. Only one of them, I think Verdell Jefferson, is on the Charlie Project, and I really didn't check NamUs. I don't know if all 3 are on NamUs or not. But what happened was that they were all missing women, I guess, for about 12 years. And some remains were found in a crawl space of an apartment building not far from where all 3 of them, they all disappeared in a general area. Well, the remains were found of all 3 of them. 2 of them were shot. I didn't write down what the other person, how the other woman died. Maybe they're not sure. But this just shows you, and this was all by accident, some construction workers were working on an apartment or something, and they were digging around in a crawl space, and these remains were found. Once again, these women's names were Joel King, Verdell Jefferson, and Dorothy Botts. And if you're wondering where I'm looking I'm looking at my notes from my other laptop. So I don't know. You should know that whoever did this is still on the loose. This is now a murder investigation. Whoever did this to these women, of course, they're believing that one guy or multiple guys did it the same to all these women. All these three women are connected in some way. But this once again shows you never know when something is going to pop up in a case. You never know. I think probably the best example for Unfound is with Laura Bible and Hasley Freeman. That case was cold, or what we thought was cold, for almost 20 years. And then all of a sudden they have a guy in custody. And then suddenly we learn all of this new information about that night and what went on the days after Laura Bible and Hasley Freeman disappeared. And we know it was pretty ugly. Christina is asking, serial killer? Christina, very possibly. I don't know the backgrounds of these women. That was not in any of the information that I read. I don't know. I don't know if they were into drugs. I don't know if they were prostitutes. I don't know anything about these women at all. I have no idea. But very well could be. I think that's, Christine, I think that's as good a guess as any right at this point, that these three women were murdered by a serial killer. I'm just wondering if there are, I think you'd have to go back to maybe 2005 into 2007 to see if any other women were murdered in that area and the bodies were found at the time. You know, maybe somebody will be able to connect that all together. I have not done that. I don't know if I will have the time to do that, but one of you may want to take a gander at that to see if any other murders around this area of Washington, D.C., any murders maybe between 2004 and 2007, something like that, could be connected to these women. So, but these were three missing persons cases. And now we know that probably the suspicion all along is that they were connected, being these women disappeared in the similar area. But now we can pretty much say for sure, being that the remains were all found in the same place. So I'm not sure if you saw that. That's a relatively new story, I think, within the last couple days that popped out. I'm guessing they had to do some sort of DNA tests. I think these bodies were actually found a while ago, and they had to do some DNA testing before the information came out within the last couple days. But that happened in Washington, D.C. So if you want to look that up, once again, all you have to do is Google Joel King, Verdell Jefferson, and or Dorothy Botts to look at that particular news article. That's something, I mean, it's always something when remains are found, but it's surely something bigger when multiple remains from multiple women are found so close together. You know, something I guess like the Mesa killer that we talked about a couple weeks ago from the Leah Peebles case. We talked about that a little bit during that. So let me take another question. By the way, if anybody has any questions for me tonight, please feel free to write them down. I only have a couple more questions to do. If you'd like to ask me about anything regarding the program or anything not regarding the program, please type it out and I will do my best to answer. It has to be PG and it can't be too personal. Let me answer another question. Chandra, and I know Chandra is in here. Chandra says there was a government website set up for the Molly Tibbetts case. Have I ever seen this done before? And do you believe this is a new tool that's going to start to be used? Chandra, I found that website, and if anybody hasn't seen it, it's findingmolly.iowa.gov. Findingmolly.iowa.gov is the site. It's just a one-page site, nothing too complex. I did not even know that it existed until Chandra asked me about it, and I said, well, I better go check this out, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I don't believe it's going to be a new tool. That I think that being that there's so much attention that is with this case for whatever reason, and maybe we need to talk about that before this program is over. I think that they did that just because they've been getting so many requests, so many leads. I'm sure that there are psychics and mediums and palm readers and everybody else pouring out of the woodwork on this case. And probably somewhere in Iowa figured, you know what, if we just generate a website, we'll just push everybody there and we'll see what happens. That's what I think is going on. I do not believe it's going to be a new tool. I don't believe they're going to set up a website for every missing person that's gone a couple weeks. I cannot see that happening at all. However, I can see it happening if a case gets as much attention as this one has. You know, and I think I said this a couple weeks ago when this case was first talked about on the program. Iowa is a state that is a little more forward-thinking, a little more proactive when it comes to unsolved murders and missing persons cases, much more than most other states. It has its own Iowa cold case site. In fact, Jody Husentrut is on that site. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised that Iowa has done this, but I would not expect to see this happen in many other cases, especially not in most other states. So I wouldn't say this is, Chandra, to answer your question, I don't see this being a new tool. I think somebody in Iowa said, you know what, we already know about setting up a website for cold cases, missing persons. Why don't we just do it for this case since we're getting so much attention regarding it? I think that that's what's going on. Tracy asked me, there's a great question. I'm going to come back to this that regarding mullet tidbits and media in a second, but I want to answer this question from Tracy. How often do you think a person knows their abductor? Most of the time, Tracy. I'd say at least 75% of the time. At least 75% of the time. And in fact, I think that if you go back through Unfound's cases, we've done over 90 now, so that's a pretty good random sample. You'll find that suspects who knew, the people who end up being suspects are usually people who knew the person who went missing. I'm not saying there aren't cases of stranger on stranger crime. It happens. But how often do I think? 75% of the time, at least, Tracy. And I think that if you were to go back and look at each of Unfound's cases, I haven't done that, but I think that that's what the number would probably pretty closely come out to. Because you have to remember, the number one instigator, in my opinion, for missing persons cases and murders, I mean, just outright murders where there is a body left behind, are relationships. So that would make sense that it would be such a high number, 75%. Sherry, have I ever been to Bonnaroo? No, Sherry, I've never been to Bonnaroo. Katrina asked me, when will your new podcast come out? My podcast, Katrina, if you're new to the program, I know you said you've been working on it. Unfound's episodes come out every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I set up a link in the discussion group. I set up a link on the page where you're viewing this video right now. But they come out 2 p.m. Eastern time every Friday, if not earlier than that, depending. But that's when that will be coming out. So, for example, this Friday's case, the disappearance of Kemberly Ramer, 2 p.m. Eastern this Friday. Shuri also asked me, what are your thoughts on DNA? Is it private? Do you forfeit your rights to discarded DNA when you commit a crime? Shuri, we've been through that. We've talked about that a little bit. I do believe that at some point down the road, a defense lawyer is going to make a very provocative, very persuasive argument that we own our DNA. I think that's going to happen. I have no law degree or anything like that, but I believe that at some point that's going to happen. Absolutely. And And I think that there is, I know how many crimes have been solved and everything else because of it. But given what has been going on out there, I think that at some point it's gotten a little crazy. My personal opinion is, despite all these cases, the original Night Stalker, etc., it's gotten a little crazy, especially with the use of private companies. Once again, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if I lived on this earth 40 more years, at least when it comes to the laws regarding DNA in the United States. I would not be surprised if they changed. I'll just put it that way. Michelle says, hello, first time live watcher. Great, Michelle. Thank you. I have a question about the Donnie Smatlack case. I know it is old, but I've been binging your podcast. My question is, there is any updates on this case, or is it possible he was doing undercover work where he had a degree in criminal justice? I've only finished through 2016, so I apologize for the question that be answered in the podcast. Thanks. Michelle, here's my suggestion. I suggest you go back about a month and you listen to the update episode that I did, because Donnie's is one of the ones that is covered in that, and it has quite a few updates to it. That's what I suggest you do. I'm guessing that his coverage of his episode is maybe within maybe at the 20-minute mark of that, if you just want to go directly to it, because I did the cases in order. I would urge you to listen to that and see what I had to say, because there are some updates regarding that case, and then we can talk about it. Okay, I don't want to go, because I know a lot of people have listened to the update episode and know what I'm going to say. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I would tell you to do. And then you contact me personally, and then we can talk about it one-on-one. How about that? Ginger says, isn't the reward for Molly up to $400,000? I would think if someone knew what happened, the money would make them single like a bird. What's your opinion? I think reward money doesn't work. I think that reward money is a waste of time. Name the last time a case was solved because reward money was put up. I think that I think reward money and listing how much it is great attention for the case. I mean, because as you know, now everybody's talking about, look at that reward number. Wow, that's crazy. It gets people talking about the case, but does it actually help to solve it? I think that's debatable. I don't know if there's ever been any studies done on that, but I can't remember the last time a case happened, there was reward money, and somebody came forward because of the reward money. People usually come forward because they know something, not because whether there's reward money or not. Their conscience gets to them, or they suddenly happen upon that they remember something, or they knew something from the start. I just think that reward money, I know that, I guess in the United States, when we think of reward money, maybe we think about the Wild Wild West and stuff like that. I know that's the image that comes to my mind. Maybe it worked back then, but in the 21st century, I'm not sure that works. Maybe you know, the problem with reward money is it also causes all the kooks to come out of the woodwork. And I've had more than one person off the record, family member and other people, tell me that. Christina, welcome tonight. Good to see you. Michelle, you're welcome. Wasn't there reward money in the California jogger case? Sherry Papini, there was reward money in that case, and nobody collected it. You know, and of course, we're still not sure what happened in that case. So I don't believe anybody collected any reward money in that case at all. So there you go. Let's get to another news item. And this has to do with a Shannon Watts and her 2 children who went missing on Monday morning. This is what happened north of Denver, Colorado. She's pregnant and she has 2 kids. And what happened is that weekend, from what I've read, I don't know anything more about this case than any of you do. I've read the same articles. I have nobody's contacted me privately to say anything about the case that isn't in public. But she went on a business trip allegedly the weekend, this past weekend. I guess she was with a coworker, a friend. She got back at about 2 a.m. Monday morning. Then her husband got up at like 5:15 a.m. She was there. They allegedly had some sort of emotional discussion. He left to go to work, and he got worried when he was trying to contact her later that morning. She wasn't picking up her phone, and then they must have some of these 21st century style doorbells where when you hit it, a video starts taping or something like that. And he was at work, and this thing kicked on, and a friend had come over to their house and hit the doorbell. And when nobody answered the front door, he got a little worried. So he decided to leave work, went home to find that his wife wasn't there and the two children weren't there, but the car was still there. So people have asked me already, a couple people have emailed me personally, off the, not off the record, but privately. What I think happened this case, what is my insight into this? Also, she had a doctor's appointment that Monday morning, of course, that she didn't show up for. Hello, Sarah. Diane, welcome tonight. Sarah, thanks for joining in. We're just talking about the Shannon Watts case, this new missing persons case in Colorado. There's a couple things that stand out to me. And and once again, it's very early on. I'm not here to rumor monger. I will just tell you the facts that caught my eye. All right. I'm just going to tell you facts that caught my eye that seem strange to me. They could be nothing. Nothing. They could be absolutely nothing. It did catch my eye that she was on a business trip over the weekend. And that she got home at 2 a.m. Once again, I'm not in the business world. I don't wear suits and ties to work. I haven't had a job like that for several years. I've only ever gone on a business trip once in my life, so I would not say that I know anything about those. But to go on a business trip over the weekend that gets home on a 2 a.m. on a Monday morning, maybe that's common in the business world. It seems strange to me as a guy who works from home and works in shorts and a t-shirt all the time, but I don't know. Amanda says, with those doorbells, you can usually track the activity in the house, like doors and windows opening and closing. Well, I think that's what he was doing, Amanda, which brings in a whole new set of why was that set up? Were they worried about people who were coming over to the house? Are they just into tech stuff? That's another question I have, that they would have something like that and he would have it on at his work or something. Once again, I'm not familiar with it. I know it exists. I don't have it. But it does make me think. I don't know. Hello, Donna. How are you doing tonight? Good to see you, Donna. I'll be coming back down to Florida here next week. I know it's nice and hot down there. It's good to see you tonight. I don't know if you've ever tuned in. Donna Davis, former guest of Unfound with her daughter Nikki, who disappeared in Detroit. I think this is her first time tuning into the show, to my knowledge. But Donna, it's great to see you tonight. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Tracy says the whole situation regarding Shannon Watts is just odd. I agree. Barbara, welcome tonight. Chandra says it's very common now, that kind of tech. Okay. If you say so, Chandra, I believe you. I just don't know that much about it. But getting home at 2 a.m., and then they had an emotional conversation before he leaves to work. You know me. I just said it 5 minutes ago. Relationships are the main driver of disappearances, and I hope her husband didn't do anything. I don't know what happened, but if the husband did something, then that means he did something to the kids too, and that's just more than I want to think about right at this second. Donna says it's seriously hot in Florida. Okay, Donna. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to prepare myself. Michelle says, I want one of those doorbells just for security. I never answer my door without knowing who is there. The doorbell, if tripped, it notifies your phone. Right, and that's what happened. And that's why he thought it was a little odd that he saw the friend come over and then his wife didn't answer the front door. So I don't know what to think. I will admit one thing. I think I can admit this. Being that she was pregnant and being that she was going to see the doctor on Monday morning, I'm going to guess that she was going to be going out Monday morning to the doctor because of her pregnancy as a checkup or something. I'll just put this out there. Is it possible that maybe the baby she's carrying isn't her husband's? That just popped into my head. I know nothing about this case. All right, other than what all of you know, other than what I've read. But these are the thoughts, once again, from my experience, reading over all the cases I've read over the years, covering all the cases that we've covered, and I've produced them, you've listened to them. These are the thoughts that come to my head. Is it a coincidence she disappears with her children right before she was supposed to go to the doctor? Is it a coincidence that she disappears right after coming back from a business trip? Those are the kind of questions that drive me nuts. They do. And not, in every case that I cover, I try to figure out, is it a coincidence or are they related? Is her disappearance related to the point that she was going to be going to the doctor? Is her disappearance related to the point that she just came back from a business trip? It's like Jennifer Kessie. Is it a coincidence that she disappeared right back after she came back from going on a vacation with her fiance? Those kind of questions, even though I sleep well at night, those questions keep me up sometimes. Donna says domestic. I pray for the children. Okay. Donna, me too. Michelle says, why would he say an emotional conversation? That in itself seems odd. Why wouldn't the doorbell go off when she left? I don't know. Michelle says, good point, Ed. Thank you. Tracy said, well, that's a thought I never thought of. I'd be interested to know what thought you never thought of, Tracy. And I love how you wrote that. That makes me smile a little bit. These, people ask me, I get a lot of this, sometimes on here, sometimes in emails that are sent to me, just in conversations I get in with some of the listeners. How do you think about these cases? What is the logic that you go through when you hear about a case for the first time? And I'm always looking for the things that seem like coincidences but aren't. Okay, that's usually where I try to concentrate, some of my time. This Friday's case, Kemberly Ramer is a perfect example. She disappeared when she went up, when she was at her father's house alone. Is it a coincidence she disappeared on the night that her father didn't just happen to be there? We don't know. And I'll get into that in a moment. I'm going to get into the Christina, I hope you cover this case. Sounds fascinating. Christina, I'm hoping that Shannon and her children are found perfectly fine and I don't have to cover it at all. Maureen says, your curiosity is why you're so good at your job. I appreciate that. Thank you. Who argues with a pregnant woman at 2 a.m.? Not me, Dorothy. I don't know any pregnant, but hey. People have perfectly fine marriages and they get into little tiffs once in a while. So I don't know what to say. I don't know how to answer that. Tracy says about the baby not being her husband's. Well, if the statistics regarding that are this. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I remember reading this. I don't even know what I was looking at, but 15. The number is in the United States who are born are not the son or daughter of the guy who thinks it's his son or daughter. It's between 8 and 16%. And I ever since the first time I read that, I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting statistic. So there are a lot of men who are raising children who they think that they're own, but they aren't. Between 8 and 16%. So when I hear about a woman who is pregnant with 2 kids who goes missing, and she's just a few months in, and she was supposed to be having a doctor appointment, probably regarding the baby or something, that goes through my head. It just goes through my head. Rachel, thanks for joining in tonight. Thanks for watching. No, Donna says no one argues with a pregnant woman. Very, very, very out of respect. No matter if what the child is be, respect no matter what. Sherry says, "Wow." I guess you're saying "wow" regarding that statistic. That's true. You can, Sherry, you can look that up. Anybody can look that statistic up. Tracy says, "Now that you said it, it makes perfect sense. That does happen a lot." I mean, did she come home and tell her husband that the baby she's carrying isn't his? I don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't look good. I mean, and it could be that after they had that emotional conversation, she called the guy who it is, his kids, and he came, picked her up, took the kids away. I mean, you have to remember something. I mean, when I first read about this, I thought about the Kristen Montefiore case. And that Hawaiian guy, I forget his name right now, who, is a suspect in her case. Remember what Dennis Mahan said about him? He was scamming women all over the place. He got some woman with children to pack, who was a married woman like North Carolina, pack up and go to the airport because she thought that he was buying her a ticket to fly her to Florida or to Hawaii. Total scam. And she was a married woman with kids. So in reading this case, that goes through my head as well. That, there are scam artists out there doing all sorts of things. So I'm just hoping that the husband didn't do anything. That's what I'm really, really hoping. I'm hoping it is something else. I'm hoping that this woman with her children are out there somewhere safe and something, maybe she's hiding out at her parents' house. I doubt it. But I hope it is something like that. There are just certain things about reading the facts of the case that make me say, well, that's probably not a coincidence. There you go. Michelle says it's always the husband. Well, it's not always the husband, Michelle. Donna, someone he knows or hired, perhaps it's very strict. Donna, it's possible. He knows, someone the husband knows, hired, it's possible. But I wanted to bring it up because, this is the things they start. Once again, I don't want to be a rumor monger and everything. I don't do that. But they're already just the facts that are public kind of tell me that maybe there were things going on in her life that happened that weekend or were going to happen that morning that might have something to do with her disappearance. And it might have nothing to do with her husband. It very well could be that she told him something and he was like, oh, okay. Well, I got to go to work. We'll talk about it when I get home. I just don't know. I just don't know. Once again, I hope that she is fine. I hope that they're all found alive, and I hope I never, ever have to do an episode on it. I hope so. Dorothy says, you remember that guy from from the Kristen Montefiore case. I remember him. That was a real con man. Right. They're all over the place. They are all over the place, Dorothy. Jeremiah, thanks for tuning in late, man. Thanks for getting here. We're going to do one more question. I've gotten this question before, but I think Emma is I don't know if she's in here, but I told her I would answer. She didn't say, she said she wasn't going to be able to tune in tonight, but I need to answer this question, and it's a question I've gotten before. Will I ever cover the Maura Murray case? And Emma asked this question along the lines, there's so many rumors out there, and she thinks the way I do Unfound, it would be, I'd be, kind of bring some, kind of bring something else to the conversation on top of everything else that's already been done with that case. There are no plans. I have no plans to do that case. For reasons that I've stated before. What's up, Jeremiah? Thanks for the smiley face. There has been so much coverage of that case. And I have to even say at this point, it's hard to know where the facts end and the rumors start. I think that the Murrays, although I know they've come out, and I know Mr. Murray did an interview recently, but I know for a while they were, totally seemed like nobody had talked to them. And I know that of course there's a podcast that's already devoted to that case. There is a website, a guy wrote a book about covering that case, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have no plans to do it simply because I know in doing it, first of all, I don't know right at this second what I would be able to add to everything that's already been done. All right. I think that the facts are out there. They've been gone over and over and over, and it's like a cottage industry now. And in fact, for any new true crime podcasts that come out, you want one way to boost your numbers real quick, just do that case because everybody wants to listen to it. That's not what I do. I think also the other problem is that if I cover that case, I have to cover it like any other case. And I know my opinions on it would generate so much flack that I would be getting trolled, I guess, so bad regarding it that I'm willing to talk to Mr. Murray or whoever in the Murray family. I don't turn away talking to people. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk. But I just think that if I'm going to cover the case, then I have to say everything about it. And I think it's really been a disgrace the way people have covered that case. I think that there are people, at some point, that you start to wonder if I think people would rather be right, want to be right, and it not get solved than be wrong and it actually does get solved, because there are so many cliques now regarding this, and they hate each other. And I just want to stay away from it. I just decide there are many other cases that certainly need Unfound's attention, so it doesn't bother me that I've said probably I will never cover that case. It doesn't bother me at all. Michelle says, I think it was the bus driver. Just your opinion. Laura says, this is the first time I've tuned into the Unfound live show, enjoying it. Thank you, Laura. But Emma, I know you're not listening or watching. You're going to watch it afterwards. But that's the reason. I feel for the Murray family. I think that they have been wronged in so many ways. I thought that even before I started Unfound. I even know it to be truer now. And I really don't know if all of the people who have devoted so much time to it have helped that case at all. I think that there have been a lot of profiteers from it. I think that there are people that have gotten involved in it just to pump themselves up, to get their own notoriety. And I'm just going to stay away from all of it. I think that with her disappearance, I think her disappearance is much simpler than anybody wants to admit. But I think that people continue these other things because it gets their attention, it gets people's attention, and they get attention from it. It's like conspiracy theories, talking about all these things. People talk about them because it gives them power, and people start tuning in and everything else. And they're not, so they actually they hope the case continues so they can continue to get attention, because they know as soon as it gets solved, nobody's going to care what they have to say about it anymore. That's my perception. I don't know any of these people, but I've had a long time to think about it, because I've been asked this about 20 times this year, and the thoughts are always the same. Sherry says, I said those exact words today regarding Molly Tibbetts. Rebecca, I am familiar with the Morgan Nick case, missing from Arkansas. Would certainly like to cover it. Certainly. If you know any, Emily, my assistant, is from Arkansas. I think that we can make that happen. Yeah. I think we can make that happen. Michelle says, I also think the TV show did damage by spinning it for ratings. That happens, Michelle. All about the dollars, not about Mara. Michelle says, that's a shame. People are crazy sometimes, not about attention, about the missing. It's true. I mean, all of you, hey, all of you go and see what other people are doing much more than I do. As I've said, I really don't follow a lot about what other people are doing. But I know what was going on when I first got involved in Unfound, what was going on in the Mara Murray case. I remember all that stuff. And I don't follow it now, but I know what's going on, and I know once in a while people tell me what's going on. And you know that's just not how I handle my business. And, I'm a reporter, and I try to be professional. And there's just been, I think, a lot of unprofessionalism and people seeing an opportunity to pump themselves up and get notoriety and get followers and clicks and everything else. And just want to stay away from it. Trina, thanks for tuning in. I think it's about time that we talk about this week's case. And that is the disappearance of Kemberly Ramer from OPP, Alabama on August 15th, 1997. And you're going to say, wait a minute, August 15th? Yes. Exactly 21 years ago today, Kemberly Ramer disappeared. That is just a coincidence how that worked out that we're covering her case this Friday. Her mother and her father were divorced. He was living in Alabama. She was living in Walton County, Florida, about 30 miles away. And Kemberly was up there. She went to high school in and she was up there to get her senior pictures taken. It was a Friday. And she was up there, and she was going out, and her father was going out. They left the house at the same time. He told her to be home by 11:30 that Friday night. She said she would be. He did not come home that night. He was at his girlfriend's. He didn't come home till Saturday morning. Didn't see anything that was amiss, although Kemberly's car was there. Didn't think much about it because she was supposed to be going out with a friend of hers that day anyway. It wasn't until Sunday, so 2 days later, almost 48 hours later, did he realize that something was amiss. And that's when he went into her bedroom and found that the pictures had been knocked off the wall, and there was a pillow stuffed behind the headboard, between the headboard and that same wall. That is at the point when he figured out that Kemberly was missing. And that's when he called Sue, Kemberly's mother, and Sue is my guest this Friday. This episode is called Where the Secrets Lead, because what happened was you're going to find out in this case that some people were keeping some secrets in this case. First of all, Kemberly herself. She had a boyfriend in that nobody but her closest friends knew about. And the fact is that this boyfriend, she was 17, he was already into his 20s, and he had already been married once and had a child. And Sue admits in the interview that probably that's the reason she was keeping this guy's secret. And in fact, her father did not know about this guy, but we now know that that Friday night, she was going to see this boyfriend that her father didn't know about. So there's that. And the boyfriend, of course, has been looked at. He claims that she left. She was over to his house. She left to get home by 11:30. That's his story to this day. But there's another secret, and we are going to reveal the name of a suspect that, to my knowledge, has never been named before anywhere, on web sleuths anywhere. And this guy just happens to be Kimberly's older sister's boyfriend at the time. His name is Jerry Anderson. And it wasn't until after Kemberly disappeared that her sister, along with the parents, found out that Jerry Anderson had a long criminal record of assault, burglary, etc. And so we take a look at him during this episode. And in fact, tomorrow I will be posting in the discussion group and on the page his criminal record that I found. And you will see a mugshot of him. But he was Kimberly's older sister boyfriend at the time. And his alibi for the night that Kemberly disappeared is very, very weak, as far as Sue has told me. It'll be up to you to determine what you think about that. So his name has never been, you will not find his name anywhere. Here in the interview that the FBI to this day thinks that he is the person responsible, but I will tell you that I'm not so sure. But you can listen to, I know, just like last week with Melissa Hasley, I know oftentimes you think differently than I do. I think that's great. But you can listen to the interview and try to figure it out for yourself. All I know is that some people were keeping some secrets, and those secrets came out after Kemberly disappeared, and it could take you in a variety of directions regarding this case. Once again, it's the disappearance of Kemberly Ramer, where the secrets lead. She disappeared on August 15th, 1997, 21 years ago exactly today, from OPP, Alabama. So Sue did a great job with the interview. And once again, you're going to find out a lot of things about this case that are not on the public record yet. But I thought Sue did a great job in their interview. Rebecca said, "We'd love to see you cover the case. I guess Maura Murray's case. Keep on doing what you're doing. I started following because of Thomas Brown. I lived in Arkansas when Morgan disappeared in my sorority." Oh, I guess you mean Morgan. I apologize, Rebecca. Morgan. Nick, I disappeared in my sorority, did a fundraiser for her mother. People have not forgotten Morgan. It needs to be solved. Love to see it happen with Unfound. Thank you, Rebecca. I'll try to get on it. I got a list of cases, as you can imagine. Rebecca, I knew what you meant, Rebecca. Christy said, "Good for you staying away from the MM case. Totally agree with you. I feel so bad for her family." Christy, if I can find a way to cover it in a way that I think is going to keep the trolls off of my Twitter feed and out of the discussion group and telling me how stupid I am and how I just don't want to look at things the right way and everything, I will do it. I just don't want to put up with any of that stuff. I just don't have the time for those people. I just don't. I just don't. If Mr. Murray wants to contact me personally and wants to talk with me and everything about his daughter's case, we'll talk about it. I'll see what he thinks about it. He can contact me anytime. If anybody knows him out there, you can have him contact me. We'll talk. But I will tell him my concerns exactly like I tell all of you. And I just don't want me to become another distraction on top of everything else that has already happened with that case. I will work with the Murray family if they contact me, if they think that it would be constructive. All right, and we can avoid some of the things I've talked about. I just don't want to deal with it. Carrie says, "I will have to rewatch. Was watching middle grandson, mommy and daddy came to get him." Carrie, you'll be able to find this as soon as I'm done. It gets recorded. Shuri says, "So if Melissa Hasley case is 50-50 and you're the tiebreaker, which side are you leaning?" Well, it wasn't 50-50, Shuri. The listeners have spoken. It's more like 66-33 in favor of, the murders and her disappearance being related. I still come down on the fact that Melissa's disappearance is a standalone disappearance, had nothing to do with anything else. And I think the murder of her sister 4 years later had nothing to do with her disappearance. That's where I come down on it. Listeners feel other way. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I feel out of the loop now, Carrie says, okay. Well, I'm going to go. We've been going at this for an hour and 15 minutes. This is one of the longer episodes of this show. So I'm going to go. I think, what did we do? We talked about me still being in Pennsylvania, obviously. We talked about me going to the Trib. We talked about the Melissa Hasley case from last Friday. We talked about a newsletter that all of you should be looking for tomorrow. We talked about the 3 bodies found in Washington, D.C. that I believe are all related, all murders, missing persons cases until recently. We talked about Shannon Watson, her 2 children disappearing in Colorado this past Monday. And then we talked about this Friday's case, the disappearance of Kemberly Ramer. And then I took a bunch of questions from all of you, and they were all spectacular. So that's it. I'm going to go. Favorite time of the week. It's about an hour and 15-minute show. I love it. And you will all hear me on Friday. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Always love it. I'm pretty sure the next Wednesday show will be coming to you back in my home in Madeira Beach. We'll just have to see. But I'm thinking so. Good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Deeply appreciate it. Thank you.